I think the events in Japan and the Fukushima plant have really had a potentially transformative impact on Asia and its ambitions to have nuclear power. It's really signaled a new concern. Before this, the governments were really rushing ahead without much due regard to public sentiment, due process of getting environmental impact assessments and really just getting their homework done. Instead, they announced very high-scale, high-speed development plans, even for countries which have had no experience whatsoever in running this kind of nuclear energy plants. Now, having said that, I think that Asia is in a dilemma. They do need more energy. And if we think about environment and climate change, we don't want them using the most abundant source of energy they have, which is coal. So we've got to be looking for a solution. And I'm not saying at this stage that nuclear energy can't be part of the solution, but certainly a due process, deliberate, careful, methodical, rather than rushing ahead, is the right answer. And so, like Indonesia, I think is the first country that should really be taking lessons from what happened to Fukushima. It's had tsunamis, it has earthquakes, it's right on the rim of fire. And some of its earlier plans literally had the siting of the nuclear power plant right in an earthquake zone. So I think it's really a country that's got to look at this issue again, lest it cause a problem to its own people and more broadly to the whole region if there are problems. Vietnam is rushing ahead. And Vietnam again has had earthquakes before, and so has Thailand. And these two countries really need again to give a pause. And the problem is that sometimes they see this not just in terms of the energy requirements, but also a kind of a status symbol that I've arrived. It's like the new rich in Asia might buy a Mercedes or a Bentley. The new state rich want a nuclear power plant, and I think that would be a bad mistake. I think in the wake of the Japanese problems, China has actually given a very responsible call to pause and relook at their strategy and the safety limits. They're going to build very ambitiously. China desperate for power, and a lot of their power plants around the south of China could have an impact not only on China but also, of course, Hong Kong, China. Last year, one of the plants in Shenzhen actually had a small leak. So the Chinese record on nuclear power is relatively good, but again, the scale of ambition is like threefold, fourfold within X years, and with speed, a lot of the standards may go down. So a lot of people have said, we shouldn't overreact. The Fukushima plant is 40 years old. It's exceptional circumstances, but that's the entire problem. The plant wasn't decommissioned when it needed to be. The earthquakes were worse than people thought it would be. And those on the coast, the wall did not prevent the tsunami from overwhelming the cooling plant. And though we admire generally the Japanese culture of safety, the competence of their engineering, we look at the response by TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, and we really have to question whether they, like other agencies, would be quick enough to respond, transparent enough, or whether they would be, prone to, frankly, a kind of chaotic circumstances when it is part of an earthquake and a larger issue. So I think this is a good time for Asians not to dismiss the possibility of nuclear power on sort of ideological terms, but really to look at the equation of cost, safety, security, and other ways to trim their needs in energy. We often talk about energy efficiency. It's much cheaper, it can be done now, it's just making more of less. Yeah? And we haven't gone down that road. The other area, of course, we need to look at is alternative energies. I think if Asia is going to use coal, all the more we've got to look for carbon sequestration. But Asia and Indonesia and Japan could be also leaders in geothermal, using the fact that they're on this very volatile earth plate. They could be leaders rather than followers in the so-called nuclear renaissance. And I think this is a good time to explore those other options of efficiency and alternatives.